Hey, everybody. Welcome to another session of the Doug Jones, I say Doug Jones Unplugged. We're kind of plugged in up here with all these mics. This is one of our listening tours that we're going to. We're in Shelby County today with a great group here. I don't think we'll get that in there in the shots, but we got a really good group here today. We're going to do kind of like we've done before. Y'all have seen this before. We're going to have a few people come up and talk. Ask questions or give some comments to the audience here, to you folks and those that have drawn numbers. We've done this randomly, by the way. This is part of me trying to listen. This is not, you can ask questions. I know you've got one, you've already told me. But some of this is really for me and for my purpose. And I really mean that. We're going all around the state in different places, different communities, and trying to get folks to talk to us about what's important. What are they hearing? And it's not just what you think, because what you may actually think, it may be a little bit skewed one way or another. But you got friends and you got family that are talking. You hear people. You hear them in the grocery store. You hear them wherever you might be. And what are they talking about today? What's on their mind? What's good, the bad? Doesn't matter. No, this is no censored. You can, please. I'm the only one allowed profanity, okay? So, but there's really no bad question. There's nothing. We can have a conversation. So those that come up, we're going to try to do this for about 45 minutes or so, and then we'll cut the live stream off and just talk for a little bit today. So first, let me tell everybody how much I appreciate you being here to be part of this. It's an exciting time. It's also kind of a chaotic time. It's a little bit worrisome time, I know, for a lot of folks. I feel that. I see it everywhere I go. But I will tell you, there's some things going on out there. There's a lot happening out there. And my wife, Louise, and I, who, by the way, wishes she could be here, but obligations elsewhere have kept her away tonight. So, but she'll get back to Shelby County at some point. But we feel something going on and we see it. But it's still, Alabama's an interesting state. And we're a very diverse state from one end of the state to the other, and different people have different concerns. And there's environmental concerns in one place, there's job concerns in another place, there's healthcare concerns all over the state. So we're just going to talk a little bit tonight. But again, remember, a lot of this is not just me. Y'all know me, and so a lot of it really is a listening tour. I really want to hear. So we're going to get started with guest number 1, which was number 4 in the hit parade. But
yes, and this is very off the cuff.
But that's what it's supposed to be. See, I want you to give your name.
Okay, my name's Lizzie.
Mm-hmm. And you live in Shelby County?
I do.
Okay.
I live in Shelby County.
All right, talk to me. Tell me what's going on.
First of all, I wanted to just thank you for coming and doing this tour. I like I say, I wasn't planning on getting up and saying anything, but I just want to thank you because I think all of us know that some of our representatives hide in a closet or even have disconnected phone numbers when we try to get hold of them, or hold absolutely zero listening sessions or town halls.
Right.
So, this alone means a lot because we know you're accessible. We know that you listen. So
always
thank you very much. And so my question is, actually, I've lost it, but my question is not probably the top of the food chart or whatever in terms of what Alabama needs in terms of what's going on, because there's so many things I'm sure other people and you will get to. But I wanted to talk about the increasing alarming issue about the rise of data centers in this state. And it seems that, of course, they are preying on particularly poor states, poor counties, people that really need the economic boost or the tax incentive or whatever.
Yep.
But I also, I'm sure I shared the alarm with so many of us citizens in terms of the reckless damage that these are costing communities, businesses, certainly the environment, our energy resources. Bessemer is one case in point, and this is on my mind today because I just learned that this corporation called Nebius has plans to build this very, very large factory, they're calling it, around Oxmoor and the Oxmoor community. This has been, it looks like it's going to be a done deal. There's another hearing in the end of March regarding this center. So it also has, my understanding from my research, it also has foreign ties. It has, apparently one of the people involved has some links to Russia. That's a whole nother situation.
Right.
But I want to talk about now just what it's doing, the impact, the footprint it's leaving. And I know that this president has taken off regulations, taken them totally off the table. So I don't know if there's anything a governor can do about that, but I'd like to address that.
Well, it's a great question, and it is top of the line with a lot of people. I think that is going on, and it's not just the data centers. I mean, there's stuff going on in this state, and I worry about this a lot for Alabama. We seem to be susceptible whenever there is some new fad among business. They will come here and take up a lot of property, take up a lot of land, take up a lot of different things. You've got in Stockton, Meta is building a big solar farm, okay? 4,000 acres off the Tensas River. And it's a company that has had a checkered past when it comes to environmental stuff. They give all of these nice little brochures that have these solar panels with sheep under it and all this stuff. And it's just never there. Now, there's a bill pending in the legislature to put a hold on that for a little bit. You've got a carbon capture facility coming up down in South Alabama somewhere. I can't remember exactly where that is. What I worry about is that we end up being the place where people say, this is easy. We can slip this in because the government loves it, the legislature loves it, and we can slip it in without really talking to a lot of people. And we're going to end up having data centers, not just for folks here in Alabama, but we're going to be sending electricity and all this. I mean, this data everywhere because other states are putting in place regulations. Florida, as much as I've been no fan of Ron DeSantis, he has been on the leading edge in the Republican Party about trying to put a hand up to say, let's stop. I think it's a real problem. And there's some place I saw recently, and I've been so busy, I haven't really studied it. There was talk of a 2-year moratorium on any data centers. The biggest problem I think we've got right now is these things are going up left and right, and nobody knows the long-term ramifications. There are ways I think you could keep electricity prices down, but given all that's going on with our Public Service Commission and our power company, who the hell knows if that's going to happen or not? See, I told you I was the only one that could do that, by the way. So, look, I think that Florida has kind of given a little bit of a playbook about trying to slow this down. I think AI needs to also be slowed down just a little bit in this state. We've got our young people are scared to death about their jobs and where this is going. It's pretty frightening down the road. But the biggest problem that we've had in Alabama, in my view, is that we've got a government that is not transparent. They come in and they get everything done, and they get it done and they get it approved, and then they have the town halls. By then it's a done deal. Nobody is going to change that. But I think there's ways to do that. I think the governor still has appointing authority of the 26, 27 departments in the state. They need to be working together. And who knows what's going to happen with the Public Service Commission at this point. If this bill passes, all right, and I think it's important to talk about that just a minute, because the bill passed, the bill got withdrawn that was going to take away your right to vote on the Public Service Commission. Now they've got a new bill, okay, pending, that gives a PSC member in each of the congressional districts, which sounds okay, all right? It sounds okay, except that if we do away with the Voting Rights Act, it may not help us very much. We may be getting suckered a little bit on that because I'm worried about the Voting Rights Act. We're here in Shelby County, by the way, where the almost death of the Voting Rights Act occurred with Shelby County versus Holder. I know you guys didn't participate in that. But the PSC, under this new bill, the governor, Ivy, would appoint 4 new members right now in this summer that would stay in office. And then you kind of phase this in. But importantly, the governor also has a secretary of energy, which runs the PSC and sets the agendas. So we've got to watch that bill. We've got to see, because that's all tied together. Everything is tied back to the energy consumption that the AI is using. That's why these data centers are going up. And so we've got to watch that bill. I would have everybody take a look at that bill. I don't particularly like it for a lot of reasons. I do like the fact that at least they're keeping the right to vote on PSC members. But the bottom line is this: they're trying to do all this. They're trying to change all the PSC, because in Georgia, Democrats flipped 2 seats on the PSC. And now all of a sudden you got folks, the leadership, Republican leadership in Montgomery, and people running for office screaming and hollering about how broke the PSC is. And they got to fix it, because they're finally waking up to the fact that we got the highest utility bills of anybody around. But remind your friends when they are talking about this that Republicans have controlled 2 out of the 3 votes on the PSC for 22 out of the last 26 years. If anybody broke it, they broke it, and now they're in a panic. So the data centers is part of that. I don't think there's an easy answer right now, but the governor can do a couple of things with the executive orders within those departments. I think the governor can put a hold on some things, but more importantly, the governor can make sure that every dang thing is transparent. And you know from the very beginning when somebody is going to come in, and they're not just going to sneak it out, so that public and the citizens have a right to know. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks. All right. You know, y'all need to follow that PSC stuff. I'm telling you, it's really crazy what they're doing down there. And, you know, they're blaming George Soros and everything else. It's just the silliest arguments you have. How are you, sir?
Hey, good.
Nice to see you. What's your name?
My name's Scott.
Scott.
Live here in Shelby County in Alabaster.
Awesome.
Originally from Florence.
Okay.
My wife and I, my children, we've lived here 9 years.
Is that the Marines? Or
yes.
Okay.
Yes. I served.
Simplify.
Simplify,
Awesome.
man. I did 2 tours in Iraq, and grateful for it. Grateful to be out though too. So
Yeah, especially now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, especially now. Well, thank you for your service.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. My question, I guess what I want to talk about is, you know, being born and raised in Alabama and living in other areas of the country, you really see the contrast, you know, and it just seems that we have so many good things going for us, but we miss out on a lot of the economic stuff because of our reputation, because of the policies we make, you know, DEI, the library stuff. My wife is a librarian at a public university here. You know, I guess my question is, you as governor, how, I've heard you talk about like economic inclusion zones or something like that, because it seems that all the business usually either goes to Huntsville, Montgomery, or Mobile.
Yeah.
So how would those zones or your plan try to kind of spread some of the economic development out, and then coupled with kind of just changing our reputation about where people aren't afraid to move here with their jobs? You know, I don't know if it's a fact, but I mean, it just seems that we've lost a lot of business.
Yeah.
Or we never even get considered because of some of these policies.
No, I think that's right. I mean, first off, there's still going to be a lot of businesses, and there's still going to be a lot of growth in Huntsville, Birmingham, Montgomery. The Wiregrass is starting to grow a little bit more now with the fort and all down there. It's starting some economic stuff. And Mobile's going to take off because when I was in the Senate, we got some appropriations to dredge the Mobile Bay so that deep water and have a deep water port so the bigger ships can come in. So that's going to be a really big economic boost. And it should be a boost for all of South Alabama. That's part of the issues. Up north, that is going to continue. I mean, you can thank Senator Richard Shelby for a lot of that. The legacy dollars that come into those areas are coming in a large measure because of Richard. But what I'm seeing a lot of problems with are all of the economic incentives that we've got, which I have no problem theoretically with economic incentives to bring businesses here or to give somebody an opportunity to expand a business. What we don't do enough of, in my view, is to have those same economic incentives for smaller businesses, for businesses in these rural areas, in these smaller towns where they're struggling to keep people. We're losing population in the rural areas because we're losing farmers and we're losing rural hospitals. So one of the things that we are looking at trying to do was to develop a special programs to give those economic incentives for smaller businesses. You know, every town that you drive through, and I've driven through a bunch of them in the last 10 years, everybody's got a vacant shop somewhere, a vacant building. And some of them are blighted, some of them are not. Some of them could be easily, businesses could go in there. We've got to give some incentives for folks to go into those businesses in these towns and employ people in that community. And hopefully if we can develop that entrepreneurial spirit with some folks, that's what I think is lacking in Alabama, except up in Huntsville. I mean, in Huntsville, it's strong because of all of the federal dollars coming in. So I think we can, that's one thing that I think we can do. The reputation piece of this, look, I see it, and I think a lot of people feel it when they're on out of state somewhere, they meet people, and it's unfortunate. To some extent, Alabama is still living in black and white images of the 1960s. And that's really unfortunate because we are really not that way. But every now and then we see enough embarrassing moments with mainly public officials that bring it to the fore. Y'all know who I'm talking about. It's really so let's think. The first thing that maybe we can do to better our reputation, how about we elect a new governor?
There you go.
I personally don't have anything against Governor Ivey, but I'm talking about the choices that we got coming up. Let's just face it. I think that the governor sets the tone for the state. The governor is the face of the state. And, people still equate our governor, George Wallace, and that's why we're still, I think, somewhat behind. And quite frankly, some of the policies in the legislature, I think, have followed that. I think there's a lot of things that we can do. Quite frankly, it's the bully pulpit that the governor has, because the governor can be a governor for all people, or he can divide people.
Sure.
And I think that's the big issue.
I don't know if the Public Library Commission, is that something that?
Yeah, the governor has those appointments.
Exactly.
Yeah. And y'all know what we're talking about. It's the Public Library Service Board or something like that. Alabama Public Library Service is what it's called, APLS. That's the board that kind of oversees public libraries in Alabama. That's the board who's had the controversy with the library down in Fairhope and others.
Which it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was just not an elected official. It was just a partisan from the Republican Party that had said, hey, this person's going to be on it.
Yeah. The governor appoints.
Right.
They set for terms. The governor appoints. And so, that's a prerogative. That's what I was talking about. The governor Alabama has a lot more say than what you think, because we've just not had anybody to exercise it sometimes the right way. And so one of the first things that I have said that I'm going to do, we're going to basically clean house with the APLS, because that Alabama Public Service, that library is causing nothing but problems. Now, there's a couple of good people on there that I think probably should stay. But overall, it has become, our libraries are maybe the last thing that needs to be politicized the way that group has politicized.
Absolutely. Also, growing up here, we have so many areas that are just totally, they're still impoverished. My own family members, Colbert County, Franklin County. What are you, I think you had mentioned that you have the authority to do this. to expand Medicaid. We could do it now, but they're just choosing not to. Right?
That's right. The governor has the authority to expand the eligibility for Medicaid,
Right.
but the legislature still got to fund it.
Okay.
Right now, the problem is for however many years, 13, 14 years since we had the opportunity, Alabama never expanded Medicaid when they should. We've lost literally billions of dollars, folks, billions of dollars, because we could have done it for 3 years with no federal money, no reimbursement back to the feds. We didn't do it for political reasons, purely political reasons. And then it's just gotten worse and worse. And we've lost rural hospitals. We're losing doctors. We're losing nurses. So the governor can expand eligibility for Medicaid, and that is going to happen on day one of when Doug Jones becomes governor. Okay. And then we'll work. One of the problems that we've had with the lack of Medicaid expansion, quite frankly, is that we've not had a statewide champion. We've got members of the legislature, all Democrats, who have been promoting Medicaid expansion since the day one. But the fact is, there's never been a statewide office holder that was the champion to use their bully pulpit to talk about it. You're going to have that in a Governor Doug Jones. So we're going to get that done one way or another. We're going to get that done, and that is going to help our rural hospitals. And that also goes back to some of the economics too,
Sure.
because when you lose rural hospitals, you start losing a community.
Oh yeah.
And there's no question about that. And so there's so many businesses. It's not just the health, personal health for citizens. It's the economic health of the entire communities that's dependent on that hospital. So I think that rest assured, we're going to do that.
Awesome. Okay. And I guess my last question was, with your lottery plan, with that money, the money's raised from that, how in the past when it's been put up, they've talked about, I think, a lockbox, and it would only go to education, and that was a lot of the controversy. How would that work? Would we be able to use those dollars for something, not just education?
Yeah, no, that lottery failed.
Sure.
All right. So any lottery that passes would have with it its own lock box or boxes. That, I think, is something that we really ought to look at once I can get into office. Phil Ensler filed one. Phil is the lieutenant governor candidate that I helped recruit. He's an incredible legislator. He filed a bill the other day on lottery, in which some of the money would go to healthcare, some would go to education, and there's a couple of other things that I think we can look at.
Roads?
Yeah, maybe roads, but we don't have to do an awful lot with roads unless the federal dollars start drying up.
Gotcha.
It's possible, but once it's done through a constitutional amendment, that's how it's pretty much locked in. So I think we need to talk about it a little bit. I mean, Phil's even talked about the idea that for some people in this state, since we are a poor state, we've got a pretty high poverty rate, that some people might ought to just get a rebate check before the holidays or something to help them with these high bills and the affordable, with their power bills, for instance, help them get health insurance. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but whatever we do, I think the thing has to be locked in at the time that voters vote on it, because you don't want the legislature getting their hands on it. You don't want a future governor getting their hands on it without it going to the voters. But I will say this too. One of the reasons we don't have a lottery right now is because too many of the special interest in Montgomery are all trying to get their hands on it.
Yeah.
And we can't. Phil introduced what I call a clean lottery bill, which means it's just allowing our participation in the lottery, like every state around us, by the way, in the Southeast, and not online gambling, not casino gambling, not anything like that. Right. And that's what I think needs to happen in the state. So thank you. I appreciate it. Great conversation.
Thank you. Good luck. I'm pulling for you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We're hitting a lot of topics here. This is great. Thank you. Hey.
Hey.
How are you?
Told to get up close and comfortable with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Scoot on in.
That's what they were telling me. We got to get up close. So I'm going to get up close.
Okay, let's do it. So give your name to everybody, into the camera there.
I'm Benja Harrison.
Okay, nice to see you.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for
again,
coming.
And thank you for doing this.
I appreciate it. Thank
You're
you.
one of the few that does.
But look, on that point, you're the second person that said that. I don't understand that.
I don't either.
I mean,
Aren't we the ones?
yeah,
Aren't we?
well, you're the bosses.
Exactly.
Okay? I
Last
mean,
I checked.
people that are elected office are servants to the public. That's why they call them public servants. And I've never understood why folks will not have town halls, will not just go out and meet folks and do things. When I was in the Senate, we started doing it. And I'll be honest with you guys, here in Alabama, and I was a Democrat, people, some of the staff would go, oh, no, we shouldn't do it. I said, yeah. Well, we first got out, the first 4 or 5 we did, it was like a pep rally because everybody was so happy to see that, the unicorn come. And I finally started saying, look, we need to go some places that maybe not as friendly and let's talk. And we started doing that. And we had great conversations with folks. I may not have won anybody over. I think I probably won a few, but that wasn't the point. The point was everybody left out of there with more information, including me. And that's the big thing. So I don't understand it. I just wanted to say that for y'all and for the camera.
Well, obviously, everybody's concerned about the economy and all that just from the questions you've already gotten. So we have part of the issue, too, we know, is that in Alabama, we really have for decades lived off the backs of the poor. And we don't, tax-wise,
Right.
It's not really equivalent across the board.
Right.
The wealthy aren't paying their fair share. Corporations aren't paying their fair share. And so therefore we have a budget that is completely and totally inadequate.
Right.
So we're not funding schools. We're not funding Medicaid. We're not funding a lot of things. So I'm sure you've thought about this a lot because we can't get anywhere if we
Right.
don't have a budget.
Right.
It's just like with us living in our households. We have to live within that budget. But if you've got somebody that's not putting in their same fair share, what do we do?
Well, it's a great question. And it's one I'm going to let Tommy Tuberville answer. No, it's a fair question. Let's back up a little bit because we do have a budget. We have our constitution, we have a balanced budget every year. So there's a projection of revenues, and if there's a shortfall, they go into proration, and there's all kind of things that happen. Our system is designed in a strange way because we've got our general fund budget, we've got the education trust fund budget, and they fund it in different ways. Then property taxes help fund education, and there is. It's universally known. It is the most regressive tax in the country.
Yep.
In the country. Because when you say they don't pay, the wealthiest pay the same percentage as folks making maybe $50,000, $60,000. Okay, it gets capped right there. So there's fundamentally a problem with that. Now, how you reallocate that and whether or not you could get a Republican legislature. A governor can't do that on their own. Whether or not you could get some reallocation that's fair, I think people would support that, candidly. I think people understand that there has to be an allocation. Nobody really likes taxes, okay? But I don't see them as a tax.
We're supposed to be in community. I mean, we're learning that the hard way.
It is, we pay for the privilege of living in the United States. Mm-hmm. Okay. And we don't pay as much as some, but we also don't have health care like some. We don't have other things like some folks. I think that right now, Alabama has had a funding problem for schools. I was having this conversation just yesterday about how to figure out a way. There were lawsuits that were filed at one point on funding, but right now, our funding is such that there is an amount that the state provides, and then it's up to the local folks. And so folks here in Shelby County, maybe, and Mountain Brook and Hoover, and those, they not only have higher property taxes so they can put more into their schools, they have foundations that put more into their schools. And so it's a huge problem. I think that Parka has done some studies about the tax system. I think everything needs to be a little bit on the table except for this. I think that there is certainly a income level to where some folks ought to have their taxes lowered a little bit in exchange for a few folks maybe having it increased a little bit. And I think you can do that in a fair way
Right.
that is not going to be a burden to anybody, including the companies. Again, I'm kind of in favor of these tax incentives to get folks here, but that's a tax giveaway. Okay, it's
And
a tax
should it last
giveaway.
for 30 years?
And it lasts for a long, long time. And it costs us, and we have the jobs, and I like that. But I don't think there's a quick answer. There's nothing that the governor alone can do. It's got to be the legislature. But and nobody wants to talk about it. It's a political season right now. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody wants to talk about doing away with taxes. I think one of the Republican candidates who's probably the most vocal right now has literally talked about doing away with the income tax. Of course, he lives in Florida where they don't have an income tax. And so if he has to move to Alabama to be governor, he doesn't want to pay income tax. That's the way I see that. But, we've got to fund services. People in Alabama want to have certain services performed not only at the local level, but at the state level. I think that's the obligation of a government. How we kind of do that in a fair way, I'll tell you a couple of things I would try to do immediately that have an immediate impact. Is number one, I would try to get the legislature really hard to once again not tax overtime. Okay, that may not sound like a lot, but for union members and other workers that work by the hour and that do work overtime, and there's incentives to work overtime, not having a state income tax on that overtime was a big deal. This legislature, the Republican legislature, let that lapse. They gave it, then they took it away. So I would do that. And the other thing is the easy one. Let's just do away with tax on groceries completely.
I'm on the RISE board. We've been working on that for years.
I know you have. And I can remember my friend John Knight, who was a state rep from Montgomery years ago, 25 years ago, started every year would introduce that. I thought we were on the road, but it seems to have just stopped a little bit. But I think
we got
right
the 3%.
now, I think right now, if we can get the right folks elected again, you got to have some champions for a lot of this stuff. Because we're making a difference with everything we're doing, and with the legislature now, we're making some differences. You can see what's going on. So I think that's an issue.
Yeah. I'm going to go to a whole nother little pocket that we haven't talked about.
Okay.
But I know you're interested in.
Okay.
And that is justice reform.
Oh, yeah.
And the Alabama solution and what's come out of that.
Oh, it's horrible.
And we are in trouble in this state, or have been, for our judicial system and where we are.
Yeah. And we've been that way for a long time.
Very long. So
what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do? The first thing, and again, I keep talking about this, folks, and I hope that between now and November, I can convince people that the lack of transparency in this state government is perhaps the biggest problem that we have across the board. Everything, whether it's the AI, the data centers, whether it is these other big things that are going to be environmentally dangerous, whether it is the prison system, there is such a lack of transparency. So I think that the governor can really start opening this up so that people can see, and not having to sneak in cell phones and get prisoners in trouble because they really shouldn't have them. Okay. I'm just telling you from a security standpoint, that's a whole different issue. So I think there's transparency, but it's something that's got to start right now. The Alabama solution, and by the way, I read today the Attorney General's comments about it. Well, it was like, we're going to protect Alabama values. I defy anybody in the state of Alabama. I don't care who you vote for. I don't care what religion you practice or whether you practice religion at all. I defy anybody to look at that film and see it. And it's plain. It's not doctored. It is just straight footage to see the blood, to see the beatings, to see everything. And to say that, I defy anybody to say that that's an Alabama value. I defy
Amen.
anybody to say that's an Alabama value. So there's a lot we don't know, including candidates like myself. The Alabama solution, I think the last part of that was in 2022. And I know since then there's a new director who's got a pretty good reputation, but I really don't know what all he's doing. I know we're spending a ton of money on a new prison, which was COVID money, okay? I also know that when they were talking about building that prison, they were talking about building 2 prisons for $900 million of COVID money. Well, we've got one that's about to be completed, and it's cost that one $1.3 billion. I think that's the number. They haven't even started really the other one. So there's something not right about the way some of this has been handled, but a new prison is not going to solve the problem. And it's a combination. It is not just overcrowding per se. It is not just the guards. I noticed there was another guard convicted yesterday of abusing inmates and the female population down in Aliceville. So it is not just that prisons per se. There's a whole kind of mindset in Alabama that for everybody that gets convicted of a crime, they're supposed to go to jail for the absolute maximum. And once we put them there, I don't think we do enough to make sure that when they get out, and most of them will get out. It may take longer than it should, but they will get out. They don't have all the reentry all the reentry programs to make sure when people get out, they can be productive members of society and not go back to, but their old ways are worse. Sue Bell Cobb's doing some work on that, trying to get some things with the parole commission. There for a while, the problem got exacerbated because the parole commission just denied parole for everybody.
Right.
That's changed some. I think they finally have gotten that message. So I do think there's some things going on, but nobody really knows about them, and we need to talk about them. We need to see them, and people need to be out there. And I am appreciative of the work that those folks did and on the Alabama solution, and keeping my fingers crossed for them this coming Sunday. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good.
What's your name? I'm Doug.
I'm Lola. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you. Tell me about you.
So I was born and raised here in Shelby County.
Okay, speak up now. We got
I was
folks
born
need to
and
get-
raised here in Shelby County, and I
Okay.
have 2 questions.
Okay.
So I know you believe in healthcare access, quality, and affordability, and that you have plans for several laws to establish these core values, including expanding Medicaid. How do you plan to promote access and quality for affordable mental health services in Alabama?
Expanding Medicaid will do that. Great question. I don't think we get enough questions about mental health, by the way. It's a huge problem. You know, I don't know, you're young, so you probably didn't know. At one point, the state of Alabama was in the mental health system. They had facilities, they did things. Then there was a lawsuit because they weren't doing them right. They were doing them kind of like we're doing the prisons these days. So that had to change. And ultimately, and it wasn't just Alabama, across the country, states started getting out of the mental health system and letting private entities, hospitals and others. Unfortunately, Alabama seems to have used its criminal justice system to house mental health patients more than they've used any kind of medical facility. And that's part of the problem we've got with our criminal justice system and the prison system. Medicaid expansion would help that a lot, okay, if we can get that, because if you expand Medicaid, you can also expand the ability for telehealth and other services that people in rural areas can get to. And so I think if you expand Medicaid, that's number one. I will say this about programs that Governor Ivey has been doing. And she and her director of mental health in her department, her cabinet level position, has really done a good job over the last few years of increasing access to mental health. I think some of those programs ought to be continued. They've got to be funded. And if we could supplement that with expanding Medicaid, I think we'd be on our way. But Alabama has actually done a little bit better the last 2 or 3 years in the mental health world. The main thing I think that we've got to do candidly, is to make sure that there is some way to recognize the mental health issues that we have, that we are right now just treating as a crime, and try to get folks some help that way as well. There's a lot of different courts that are doing some things, so good things.
So I don't know if you know, but therapists are extremely expensive. What about the people who don't qualify for Medicaid and will not, even if you expanded, but definitely cannot afford a therapist with their averaging?
Well, so here's the thing. If you expand Medicaid, that pool will be pretty small, okay? I mean, that's the whole purpose of expanding Medicaid. Right now, we have what they call a coverage gap, okay? Because people that don't make enough money for good health care, but yet they make too much money for Medicaid. We're gonna, if we can expand that, we will narrow that pool. There will always be those that are uninsured. And I think the state, it's a really good question, and the state ought to look at ways to try to help do fundings through grants and other things. There are facilities around the state, we just probably need to have more of them, that do mental health work, mental health counseling. And if we've got a situation where we've got telehealth for Medicaid patients, we ought to be able to get some telehealth for some other folks too. That is a cheap way to do it. And the problem with Medicaid, guys, by the way, and Medicare, one of the problems, Alabama has some of the lowest reimbursement rates of any state in the country. And that's a problem. When I was in the Senate, Congresswoman Sewell and Senator Shelby and I worked really hard with CMS and got those rates increased a little bit, but they're still very low. And that creates a lot of problems in these rural areas, because in rural Alabama, Medicaid is the lifeblood of the healthcare system. It's the lifeblood. It's the only way to say it. People can't do it. So it's the combination, but I tell you what I'll do, okay? When I get elected and I get sworn in, I want you to come talk to me, because I'm gonna put you on a board, or we'll do something to get you involved. Okay? Is that fair? Okay. It's a great question.
And my second question, in Alabama, especially in rural Alabama, there is a lack of third spaces, which are places that aren't school, work, or home, especially for adolescents. So the U.S. General Surgeon released a publication in 2023 that said that social isolation, due to this lack of third spaces, causes early death, premature death. So how, if all, do you plan to combat the mental, social, and economic effects of lack of third spaces?
Let me ask you a question, okay? Those are great questions, and I appreciate it. What have you seen? What have you read about? Because you've obviously looked at this a little bit. What's worked? What are other states doing? Have you seen anything that help other, we can try to get more money. That's the easy thing, but you've also got to get community buy-in a lot. What have you seen?
Grants for small businesses in rural areas, like bookstores, arcades, and just malls, trying to get people back into the malls, and school programs where they have what is called uncontrolled talk, where teenagers are just able to sit and communicate with each other and enjoy each other's presence.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Uncontrolled talk among teenagers right now scares me to death. Okay? No, seriously. Great ideas. Obviously, great ideas. I think, we've been looking at trying to do things for instance, moms and dads to some extent that can't afford childcare, and that creates problems of getting into the workforce. So we've been looking at ways to incentivize businesses, schools to provide daycares. When I was in the Senate, we passed some legislation and was able to get monies so that community colleges could provide daycares at no cost to their students, and that helped a lot. We ought to be able to do some of the same thing. Now, a lot of that may be federal dollars. It's really difficult to get state dollars for programs beyond the essential services. That's one of the problems we have. It goes back to the revenue. You can call them taxes, you can call it revenue, but it goes back to the inability to get extra revenue. But if we could develop programs that would incentivize businesses to create those spaces, either for their employees' kids that come in or community. There would have to be some control, some element of supervision. That would all cost money, but there ought to be grant money, and there should be some, look, that's also the kind of thing I think that we don't use enough of, and that's some public-private partnerships where we give, those same incentives for that company to provide that, and you work with the companies, you work with the school systems. There ought to be a lot of ways to do that, I think, and even nonprofits, if you can incentivize nonprofits in ways to do that, renovate some buildings, renovate some outdoor spaces, do those kind of things necessary, and hope that uncontrolled talk doesn't get out of hand. I'm just kidding, that. Great questions. Got something else? You got it? Is that it? That was awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stay in touch, okay? All right. So we've gone a little bit past the time here. I want to thank everybody. We're going to stay here for a few minutes and just talk a little bit. We're going to cut this off and do some things. What we do here, folks, is we like to go live. We record some of this. So some of this is going to show up again on some social media. I can tell you that a lot of the last questions are going to come up on that. But that's what we're doing. We're trying to get out in as many communities as we can around this state. If you know folks in the state that would like for us to come there, let us know. We're getting people calling. It's fun. I enjoy it. Y'all heard me before. I like to get out and I like to see folks. All we've got to do right now is we got to keep a focus on May 19th, which is the primary day. Get beyond that, and then we're going to rock and roll headed to November. So thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching.